Welcome to the NFL Playoffs Wild Card Weekend Review and Divisional Round Preview. I'm your host, Pranav Sriraman, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Jacob Robinson. Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. It's always fun to talk about football, and we have a lot to discuss. It was a great weekend, and I'm expecting an even greater weekend coming up. Before we get into it, guys, make sure to subscribe to the MHS News Productions YouTube channel for the best video and audio content around. But with that being said, Jacob, let's kick things off in the NFC because that's where we started wild card weekend. And then from there, we could transition into the divisional round for the NFC. Let's talk about the 49ers. The 49ers routed the Seahawks after a massive second half. And they take on the Dallas Cowboys, and the Dallas Cowboys routed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Both teams are coming off a massive blowout victory. So I wanted to know, what do you take from each of their wild card matchups, and what do you expect in their matchup in the divisional round?
I think it's going to be a tough game for both teams. I think for the 49ers, you really have to watch Nick Bosa and their really explosive weapons that they also have on the offense. I feel like there's just a lot that the Cowboys should be worried about, but I think there's a lot that the 49ers should also be worried about on the Cowboys, such as Micah Parsons and a few of their other defensive units that they have, as well as their offensive units, such as Dak Prescott and everyone else they have on there. And I think that both sides have some things that they need to neutralize and watch. And I think this game is going to be very different from the last game they played. Whereas Dallas played the Bucks, San Francisco played the Seahawks. It's a different game that they're going into from what they just played.
Yeah, I think that, shout out Dak Prescott. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I want to talk about. Dak has been the victim of a lot of slander for no reason recently. A lot of it is because he's thrown a lot of picks, but I mean, not all of the picks have been his fault. I mean, most of them have been off his receiver's hands, albeit he has thrown some dumb interceptions. But I mean, going out against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that playoff setting on the road and throwing 4 touchdowns and rushing for 1 touchdown. I mean, it was one of the best quarterback performances of the year. And he is now set to face off against the best defense in the NFL. And I had the 49ers as my Super Bowl winner before this entire playoff started, but I'm not going to count out the Cowboys. I mean, you look at it, they have an explosive passing attack with Dak under the helm. Their average margin of victory is in the double digits. I mean, they're such an explosive offense. Dak is such a good passer on all levels of the field, especially in the intermediate to deep range. In the passing outside the numbers as well to CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. I mean, that offense is so explosive. And I think that, with that, you have a chance. And also with the 49ers, they did blow out the Seahawks, and their defense is the best in the league. And Brock Purdy's stat line looked impressive, but to me on tape, he wasn't that impressive. A lot of the balls that he threw weren't that accurate. He got flustered when pressured. He often bailed to roll out to his left. And when he did that, it just kind of resulted in inconsistency, throwaways, poorly placed balls, just all of that type of sort. And to me, I think that if the Dallas Cowboys pass rush can really get past that 49ers offensive line and put Brock Purdy into situations where he has to bail out of the pocket and put him under pressure, I do see them having a real chance of winning this game. Despite San Francisco's weapons, despite all of their talent, I do see a path for Dallas to win this game, and that's by putting pressure on Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think this game, San Francisco's defense is definitely going to have to step it up. Even though they've been the best all year, they're going to have to kick it up a notch. I mean, they are number 1 in the turnover differential with plus 13. But even then, I mean, you're playing a tough opponent that's going to get to your quarterback. You got to get to theirs.
Yeah, and I do expect them to kind of get to Dak a lot with Nick Bosa, with Arik Armstead. I mean, they do have a lot of simulated pressures that they can run, and they can bring pressure with 4. That's what makes their defense so good. They don't have to blitz a lot. But I mean, it's going to be difficult either way for them. And I think it's mainly due to Purdy. There's just so much unknown with him and so much we've seen already to have cause for concern. But let's keep it in the NFC. Our next divisional round matchup is an NFC East matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles, who are on the bye because of the one seed, and then the New York Giants, who are coming off an upset victory over the Minnesota Vikings. And I wanted to know what you kind of took away from that game between the Minnesota Vikings and New York Giants, and really more so what you expect in this NFC East matchup between the Giants and the Eagles, and who do you have winning?
I mean, so far this year, Giants have lost both times that they've played the Eagles. I see them having a better game plan this time, thinking it through, really kind of getting it together. And if they can't do that, they're gonna lose. But I think now's their time. I don't think they're gonna lose 3 times in a row. I think that they figured them out and they're gonna step it up here. I think Daniel Jones will get it done with the help of Saquon Barkley. And although Philadelphia's a tough opponent, I think they can get it figured out. I think if I saw correctly, Philadelphia is number 1 in sacks. Um, if I read that correctly, they have 70.
Yeah, their pass rush is
So
insane. Yeah.
that's gonna be tough for the Giants. That O-line is gonna have to really step it up, and I mean, that's gonna make for a tough game. I do think that the Giants will pull it off, though. They will upset the Eagles, even though the Eagles have done so great all year. I think it's a big upset.
Yeah, I gotta disagree here. I do see the Philadelphia Eagles winning this game. I'm not going to rule out the Giants, and here's why. A lot of the people are just shooing in Philadelphia to win this game, but divisional games, as we were watching the Dolphins Bills game together, and even with a third string quarterback, that game came down to the wire. And that just goes to show divisional games, regardless of who the personnel on the field, they're always going to come down to the wire because teams within your division are best prepared to play you and exploit your weaknesses. And so that's why I'm not going to count the Giants out. But with that being said, the Eagles have a great argument to be the very best team in football and arguably the most complete team in football. I mean, they have an explosive offense. Jalen Hurts has elevated himself into an MVP caliber quarterback. They added AJ Brown to that offense. Their offensive line is the best in the league. They're such a good deep passing attack. Their running game is the best in the league with Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders. And then their defense, their pass brush has really come along. Their secondary is good. I mean, there's just so much to like about this Eagles team that I think that although the Giants are a good team and I think they're making the most out of Daniel Jones, Brian Daboll and his play calling is making the most out of Daniel Jones and a receiving room that is relatively untalented compared to the rest of the league. I think that he's doing a great job schematically, but with that being said, I think talent will win out, and I think the Eagles are a more talented team and arguably the most talented team in these playoffs.
Yeah. The thing that does worry me is not only just like the Eagles being such a good team. We look at the last 5 opponents for both teams and I mean, not looking at last week versus Minnesota. I mean, going back, the Eagles last played the Giants in the last week they played. And
Yep.
then before that, they lost to New Orleans and Dallas and then beat Chicago and the Giants. I think that their last 5 games for the Eagles, there hasn't been too much of a challenge besides Dallas. And I mean, the Giants and that one game they played the Giants, they did win 48-22, so they can do it, but the other game against the Giants, the most recent one, they did win 22-16, so it was still super close and it was still in it for both teams.
Yeah, and another thing to be concerned about the Philadelphia Eagles is Jalen Hurts is coming off that shoulder injury. I know
Yeah.
he had a week of rest, and I know he's had a couple weeks off to recover from that, but that could still bother him late in games when he has to make big throws. That could still be an aspect that hinders his game. So that's the thing to look out for. And if the Giants can bring pressure home early with Dexter Lawrence, who has been the second best defensive tackle in the league this season, it could get scary.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's a thing that you should be worried about is that shoulder. I mean, when's the last time he has thrown the ball, you know? And you
he played in the last week, but it was kind of just like they were going through the motions. But
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
nothing. Yeah.
Like, when's the last time he really got to throw the ball, if you know what I mean?
It was before the injury in Chicago, and that was like week. I don't even remember. It was over a month ago.
Yeah, the game in Chicago was December 18th. So
Yeah,
so it's been a bit.
exactly a month ago at the time this is being recorded. Yeah.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we can move on to the AFC, the Juggernaut Conference. We had the Kansas City Chiefs on a bye, and then the Jacksonville Jaguars, they are set to face off against, coming off one of the biggest comebacks in NFL history, coming back from down 27-0 against the Los Angeles Chargers. We could talk about the future of the Los Angeles Chargers and what that loss means for them another day. But this is about the winners. This is about the Jaguars. And I wanted to know what you took away from that performance, and do you see them having any chance of taking down the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend, where I'll be attending that game as well?
I mean, I think it's there. I wouldn't say it's super big, but the chance is there. I think that if they could get that offense to explode right off the bat, really get things rolling, they got a shot, you know? The question is, can they do it, you know? I mean, Trevor Lawrence threw 4 interceptions at the beginning of that last game, right? It was 4, I think?
It was four. It was
Yeah.
4. It was really bad.
Yeah, 4 interceptions right off the bat, pretty much. But he was able to turn around, which, you know, they got it done. They end up coming back winning 31-30. And I mean, you know, if they could kind of keep that momentum that they had at the end of that last game going into this one, they could do it. And you see, this is a tough game because both teams have been on fire recently. I mean, besides Jacksonville's last game, they've both been doing pretty good. They both won their last 5 games. And I mean, there's been some pretty tough challenges there for both sides in both games, really.
Yeah, I'm not going to count Jacksonville out. I think it would be foolish to count any team that's advanced this far in the playoffs out of any game. With that being said, I do have the Kansas City Chiefs winning this one, but the way Jacksonville can somehow, if they have to pull off an upset, the way they can do it is managing the clock and running the ball more than they did last game. Um, Using Travis Etienne to the fullest extent, keeping the ball out of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' offense's hands. That's the best way to beat the Chiefs. Because the more that guy gets possessions, the more the Chiefs are going to score in bunches. And if the Jacksonville Jaguars can't keep up with that, it's just going to be hard to kind of mitigate the flow that the Chiefs are going to bring. And another thing is that the Chiefs defense is liable with their linebacker core in coverage. And I think that if you access the short to intermediate parts of the field, especially in the middle of the field, I think that you could keep the Chiefs off the field while being able to score points consistently on them. So there's a path for the Jags to win this one, but I will go with the Kansas City Chiefs winning this. Mahomes, Reed, Kelsey, that offense is just too damn explosive. And with Brandon Scherf being questionable, he was limited in practice. And with him facing off against Chris Jones, who's been the best defensive tackle in football this season, and he gets pressure on mostly every rep. It's just going to be so hard for that line to hold up as well. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs winning this one.
Yeah, I think that something else that should be a concern is Frank Clark is questionable. McCall Hardman is also questionable for the Chiefs. But also on Jacksonville's side, they have 2 wide receivers out that are both questionable. And Kendrick Pryor and Jamel Agnew, as well as I think if I saw this correctly, Trevor Lawrence might have like done something to his foot last
Yeah,
time.
he had like a toe sprain.
Yeah, which I don't really know how that's gonna affect his play, especially with him being such, like, a young quarterback in the NFL. Like, he's already not used to I guess, playing at such a huge stage like this, you
Right.
know?
I think with Frank Clark, the Chiefs can do without him, but not having McCole, I mean, you saw like their offense is still the best in the league, but that offense in the red zone particularly is just so much more creative with McCole Hardman out there. And I think
Yeah.
not having him this weekend is just going to make it even more difficult to score points when you're getting close to the end zone.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. That's one of my big concerns. I do have KC winning, though.
Yeah, and with that being said, our last and final matchup, and probably the game of the year, is the Bills versus the Bengals in the divisional round. Obviously, we were supposed to see this game 2 weeks ago before the unfortunate incident where Damar Hamlin suffered cardiac arrest on the field. Yeah, like I said, thoughts and prayers are still with him and his family. But with that being said, Jacob, in this not even rematch, in this what was started and yet to be finished game, you saw the Cincinnati Bengals narrowly escape the Baltimore Ravens on a miracle play, which should have been a Ravens score, but ended up being a Bengals score. And then you saw we saw the Bills narrowly escape your Dolphins with a third string quarterback. So both of these teams have kind of had shaky starts to the playoffs. But here we are. They're set to face each other. There's no more room for error. Who do you have winning this game and why?
You see, now that's the tough thing because I would say Buffalo. It makes the perfect story, all year round. It all comes together. Um, it's kind of like just like the perfect story. Like there's no other way to put it. But both these games, these last games for both these teams should not have been as close as they were. Especially with Tua being out for Miami and then being down to a third string quarterback. And for Baltimore, they didn't have Lamar. Um, so for me, those games being as close as they were, that's shocking to me. I am a Dolphins fan, but I was really shocked it was as close as it was. I will be honest. And going into it, that makes it tough for me to look at both these teams and kind of pick a winner because it was kind of such a like lucky game for both of them. But I do have Buffalo winning. I think they're going to pull through. I think it really does just bring it all together for the perfect story, the perfect ending. Back where it all started, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I do have the Cincinnati Bengals not only winning this game but winning the entire AFC and representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. But I mean, you can go either way in this game. I mean, it's that close. You even mentioned it. It's a tough part. And we saw that game between Buffalo and Miami. Like I was telling you during the game, oh, it's over. It's over. This is going to be a blowout when Buffalo was winning 17 to nothing. And then we saw just slowly, Miami started forcing turnovers on Josh Allen. Allen was getting flustered within the pocket when he faced pressure. Miami was starting to score more, accessing the short passes. And so to me, I think that Buffalo's defense without Von Miller requires a lot more stunts and a lot more blitzes rather than bringing home pressure with four. And when they do that against an elite quarterback, you can get away with it against Skylar Thompson, but against an elite quarterback like Joe Burrow, he's going to carve that defense up if they do that. And he's going to access that middle to deep part of the field. And that's just not something you could do if you're Buffalo. So I'm really interested to see how they're going to change up that defensive game plan. Um, but another thing is they might not even have to do that because Cincinnati's offensive line is in shambles right now. I mean, they're getting injured left and right. Their tackle, Lyle Collins, is done for the year. Their guard depth is getting thin. I mean, they can get pressure with four still, is what I believe. So that's really concerning to me. I really don't know who I'm going to pick to win this game. I'm going with the Bengals. I do trust their defense. I do trust Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator, to cook something up to kind of limit that Buffalo Bills offense. And then I think offensively for the Bengals, I think that it's going to be difficult, especially with the pressure Buffalo is going to bring, combined with their coverage. Trey White is playing much better, But I mean, with Joe Burrow, how quickly he's getting the ball out these days. He's taking so much less sacks than he did early on in the season and last season. And I think that with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, there's really no answer to stopping them. So I do have the Bengals winning this game, but that's not a confident answer.
Yeah,
You really can't pick one and be too confident with it.
yeah, and I mean, like, I have it written down, like, I couldn't pick one, like, I couldn't write just one down, like, I wrote both down, I was still indecisive, and I think the key for Buffalo is don't turn the ball over like they did against Miami, um, but also the key for Cincinnati is gonna be to get to Josh Allen. You know, if you could get to him, you're gonna be good. But the Bengals need to keep their O-line strong. You know, they need to get in it this time, and they need to get together.
Yeah. But with that being said, that's going to do it for our NFL wild card review and divisional round preview. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know this was a bit of a longer episode than we intended it to be, but I do think we had great conversation. Talking ball with Jacob is always a pleasure. Jacob, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, hey, thank you for having me. It's great as always.
Yeah, for sure. But with that being said, guys, make sure to subscribe to the MHS News Productions YouTube channel for the best audio and video content around. And go to marquettemessenger.com for the best, for pretty much all of our content. But until next time, guys, peace.